Hello, you're watching A News Morning from Baku. I'm Bakhtiar Aslanov, and let's see the headlines. Turkey and Lebanon pledge to work together for regional stability with a focus on Syria, Gaza, and Lebanon's security. Ukrainian President Wladimir Zylinski meets NATO leaders in Brussels to discuss security guarantees. Private jet crashes into homes in Argentina, killing pilot and co-pilot. As the world watches Syria face the aftermath of Assad's regime and the formation of a new government, Turkey's role in regional peace efforts takes center stage. The president of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, stated that Turkey and Lebanon will act together for stability in Syria, calling it the start of a new era for the region.
Addressing a press conference with Lebanese caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati, the President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, announced a collaborative effort with Lebanon to ensure stability in Syria, lasting peace in Gaza, and broader regional stability.
Lübnan'ın güvenliği bölgenin istikrarından ayrı.
Lebanon's security cannot be evaluated separately from the region's stability. Without ensuring a ceasefire and a lasting peace in Gaza, our region cannot know calm.
Bölgemiz huzura kavuşamaz.
We also count on the role you enjoy and the active presence in the region and the world, especially in light of the radical political changes taking place in our geographical surroundings, especially in Syria, which is witnessing an Israeli occupation of part of its land, and we must exert strong pressure to end it immediately.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced that Israeli troops will occupy a buffer zone inside Syria for the foreseeable future. The move is aimed at protecting Israel's security interests. Tensions remain high across the region, but the coordinated efforts of Ankara, Beirut, and the European Union offer a glimmer of hope for lasting peace and stability. Earlier this week, the President of Turkey, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, met EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in Ankara to discuss Syria. Both reaffirmed their commitment to Syria's sovereignty and the goal of fostering an inclusive government.
Turkey welcomes the European Union's recognition of its candidate status, describing the acknowledgement as an accurate and realistic approach. The statement from the Turkish Foreign Ministry followed the EU General Affairs Council's adoption of its annual conclusions on the EU enlargement process. The ministry said in a statement that the emphasis in the conclusions on Turkey's candidate country status and key role is accurate and represents a realistic approach. Ankara welcomes the reinstatement of the high-level economic dialogue meetings and the resumption of European Investment Bank activities in Turkey. The ministry also praised the EU for recognizing Turkey's progress in macroeconomic policies and the positive steps taken to address trade issues stemming from the implementation of the customs union. Turkey expressed satisfaction with the EU's acknowledgement of its efforts to reduce tensions in the Eastern Mediterranean and its role in addressing the Russia-Ukraine war, calling these accurate observations. The statement also emphasized that EU membership remains Turkey's strategic goal, adding that in response, the EU needs to present a new vision that would strengthen the prospect of membership for Turkey. Ukrainian President Wladimir Zylinski engaged with NATO leaders and European officials in Brussels to discuss Ukraine's security needs. Zylinski described the meetings as a valuable opportunity to address both immediate and long-term security guarantees for Ukraine.
President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky met with NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte and European leaders during his two-day visit to Brussels. Zelensky stressed the need for a unified position among Ukraine and its international partners to strengthen Ukraine's defenses. Mark Rutte showed his support and indicated the alliance will do its best.
Very much high on the agenda is to make sure that the President, his team, Ukraine are in the best possible position one day, when they decide so, to start the peace talks. And that means that we have to do everything now to make sure that when it comes to air defense, when it comes to other weapon systems, that we make sure that we provide whatever we can. We know
Zelensky highlighted the importance of the meetings to align Ukraine's future security and noted that reliable guarantees were crucial for achieving lasting peace.
I think it's a very good opportunity to speak about security guarantees for Ukraine for today and for tomorrow, as you said. Well, almost everything said. But it's really very important that to use these 2 days in Brussels to meet with all our partners and to have the same, what is very important, not divided, the same joint position of Europe.
Rutte reaffirmed NATO's commitment to Ukraine, including the provision of air defense systems and weapons, with $1 billion pledged in security assistance this year. He also announced that NATO's command center in Wiesbaden, Germany, is now operational, aiding Ukraine's troop training and security efforts.
allies remain committed to delivering on the financial pledge of 40 billion euros in security assistance for Ukraine this year. And the NATO command in Wiesbaden for security assistance and training for Ukraine is now up and running. But we must go further to decisively change the course of this war.
In addition to his talks with NATO leaders, Zelensky also met with French President Emmanuel Macron to discuss the potential deployment of foreign peacekeeping forces in Ukraine. This proposal first raised by Macron in February. According to Zelensky's post on X, no consensus has been reached during informal meeting, but the two leaders continue to explore the possibility.
The UN humanitarian coordinator for Ukraine, Matias Shal, raised concerns over the humanitarian crisis in Ukraine due to ongoing war and attacks on energy infrastructure. Recent strikes caused massive blackouts, leaving millions vulnerable, especially as freezing temperatures pose risks to those in high-rise buildings, lacking heating, clean water and sewage systems. Shal warned that the worsening energy crisis could lead to further displacement of residents, potentially triggering cross-border migration. He also emphasized challenges for civilians in Russian-occupied areas.
Allow me also to mention my concern as humanitarian coordinator for the plight of civilians in the temporarily occupied territories. We should not forget them. I saw humanitarian actors implementing what we're calling the Humanitarian Winter Response Plan to address emergency needs by delivering solid fuel, providing cash for winter to ensure people can stay warm, and ensuring water systems then continue to work.
A private plane crashed in San Fernando, Argentina, resulting in the tragic death of the pilot and the co-pilot.
The plane, which had departed from Uruguay, crashed while attempting to land at San Fernando International Airport, north of Buenos Aires, Argentina. The Bombardier Challenger 300 aircraft, returning from a trip to Punta del Este, was unable to brake after landing. This caused it to veer off the runway, smash through a perimeter fence and crash into a row of houses, leading to an explosion. Several houses and vehicles were damaged in the incident.
I'm sorry, I'm still nervous. I can't recover because it was overwhelming to see the fire and smoke. My mom was inside the house with everyone, my nephew and the pregnant tenant renting a room. Everyone was inside.
Flames engulfed the wreckage and firefighters were dispatched to the scene.
I didn't pay attention until someone called me and said, "Sandra, the plane crashed." The whole house started shaking, neighbors' windows exploded, everything trembled, and then the explosion started one after another, and the smoke filled the house. We couldn't see anything. I ran out crying and screaming.
Argentinian reports state that the deceased crew members were identified as Martin Fernandez Loza and Agustin Orforte. There were no other passengers on board the plane. The reports also indicate that the aircraft belonged to Jorge Brito, the owner of Banco Macro and the president of the River Plate Football Club.
The highest court in France has upheld a corruption and influence peddling conviction against former President Nicolas Sarkozy, brushing aside his appeal. The former head of state must now wear an electronic monitoring bracelet.
Former French President Nicolas Sarkozy appealed his 2021 conviction, which resulted in a 3-year prison sentence, 2 of which were suspended, and he was ordered to wear an electronic bracelet instead of serving the last year in prison. The conviction stemmed from Sarkozy's attempt to bribe a judge and use his influence to obtain confidential information about an investigation into his 2007 campaign finances. The former French president's lawyers said they would appeal to the European Court of Human Rights.
Celui de son pays et celui de ses enfants. 3 jours pour gagner.
Sarkozy is also facing a separate trial next year over alleged Libyan funding for his 2007 presidential campaign, which he denies. If convicted, he could face up to 10 years in prison. Sarkozy's predecessor, Jacques Chirac, is the only other French president to be convicted of corruption.
The official death toll from the cyclone Cheetos in Mozambique has risen to 45. During the cyclone, in some areas, over 90% of homes were damaged or destroyed, while the full extent of the damage in rural areas remains unclear. Preliminary assessments of international organizations indicate that approximately 190,000 people are in urgent need of humanitarian assistance. 33 schools have been affected and nearly 10,000 homes were destroyed. In some villages, almost no houses remain standing. In Malawi, the death toll has increased to 13 after the storm, which struck continental Africa after passing through the French territory of Mayotte. Mayotte remains in the grip of a severe water crisis, with residents crowding distributing points and wells to fill jerrycans and buckets. Following the cyclone, emergency aid efforts have ramped up. According to the Reunion Island prefect, state and chartered planes are making multiple daily trips to deliver resources, with 9 rotations now in operation. Commercial flights remain suspended as the island works to recover.
The poorest territory of France, archipelago Mayotte, is living a nightmare. Residents report severe devastation, including roofs torn off buildings, streets littered with debris, and entire areas rendered inaccessible. The full extent of the destruction still remains unclear.
We heard that there will be rescue services, aid, soldiers, but for the moment we haven't seen them. We managed in our neighborhood to clear the streets. There were policemen who came and helped us clear the streets because they were scared that at night the burglars might attack the houses.
Local authorities have struggled to provide essential services as water and electricity supplies remain severely disrupted. Residents in many areas feel the response has been inadequate.
Since Saturday morning, when the cyclone passed in just 3.5 hours, nothing has really happened, apart from us, the people, trying to clean up. I haven't seen any municipal technical services here. I was concerned about that. Where I come from, whether it snows or the weather is bad, technical services are on the ground, managing things regardless of the situation.
Amid the crisis, calls for targeted aid from the French government have grown louder, with residents warning that the rebuilding process might extend over a long period.
I expect the state to provide special, specific aid for Mayotte, because for Mayotte to recover it will take years. I may have exaggerated, but when I talk about years, it could be 2 years, it could be 3 years. Already we don't have the means to clear the debris.
A video released by the French military showed soldiers and medical teams providing aid to residents of Mayotte after cyclone. Aid, including essential goods, medical staff and police, is being delivered through an air bridge from Reunion Island, the territory's main lifeline. French officials have warned that hundreds, possibly thousands, may have died in Mayotte. Disrupted transportation links have further isolated the island, complicating relief and recovery efforts. The situation has reignited debates about Mayotte's infrastructure, its capacity to handle natural disasters, and broader systemic issues, including poverty and immigration, that exacerbate the territory's vulnerabilities.
Cyclone Cheetos' devastation in Mayotte underscores France's neglect of its overseas territories. The disaster highlights ongoing poverty, overcrowding and inadequate support from the French government.
The Cyclone Cheetos' destructions exposed long-standing issues of poverty, overcrowding and climate vulnerability in Mayotte. The island's fragile infrastructure and underfunded public services have left its residents struggling to cope. Local leaders have sharply criticized the French government, accusing it of neglecting Mayotte's needs, especially in the wake of the disaster, and demanding more support to address the health and infrastructure crisis exacerbated by the cyclone. Mayotte is the poorest of France's overseas territories, with the lowest GDP per capita in the nation, a stark contrast to welfare regions like Ile-de-France. The island also faces health challenges, rarely seen in mainland France, including frequent outbreaks of hepatitis A, cholera and typhoid fever. Despite these struggles, the French government's response has been criticized for being insufficient, raising questions about President Macron's commitment to supporting Mayotte and other overseas territories. The Mayotte crisis highlights deep issues within the French government, mirrored by strong opposition to the 2025 budget. Prime Minister François Bayrou faced criticism over tax hikes, increased borrowing and reliance on last year's framework. Left-wing parties have condemned the plan, while Marine Le Pen's National Rally criticized the tax increases but withheld final judgment. Recalling remarks made last week, far-right leader Jordan Bardella cautioned Prime Minister Bayrou against blindly adhering to President Macron's policies. As tensions rise, the government's ability to address the urgent needs of its territories and secure a stable economic future remains uncertain, leaving the country at a crossroads.
Colombian authorities seized cocaine worth over $50 million off the country's coastline. According to the Colombian Coast Guard, a shipwrecked vessel carried nearly 1.5 tons of cocaine off the coast of Buenaventura on December 17th. Reportedly, 3 men and black packages were floating near Coast Guard ships. The boat heading to Central America was carrying cocaine valued at over $50 million on the international market. The 3 men were rescued and detained. A sea lion was discovered peacefully sleeping on Ipanema Beach in Rio de Janeiro, surprising both locals and visitors. The annual appearance of the animal during the summer season has left beachgoers curious about its unexpected visit.
Ipanema Beach in Rio de Janeiro became the setting for a rare and captivating sight. A sea lion peacefully resting on the sands. The Maritime Rescue Group quickly cordoned off the area, allowing the animal to rest undisturbed. While the sea lion napped and yawned, observers from the community and the media kept their distance to ensure the animal's safety. De Araujo, who was one of the first to spot the sea lion, shared his amusement.
We arrived here in the morning to set up the school materials and saw some strange movement near the sea. When we approached, we noticed a sea lion making noise, very agitated and full of sand. It was very funny.
Suelen Santiago, the coordinator of a local beach monitoring project, suggested that the sea lion may have stopped to rest during its migration.
Today, here in Ipanema, we have the presence of an Antarctic sea lion. It's typical for these animals to visit Brazil during winter and spring, but it's rare to see one in the summer. We can observe that this animal is healthy, resting as part of its migration journey.
Experts believe the sea lion, likely carried by marine currents from the Antarctic region, is in good health and will continue its migration soon.
Well, that's all we have for this hour. You can also get latest news and headlines around the clock on our website, that is anews.tv. Thank you for watching, and also we wish you a good day ahead.